Okay, well, here's another flipped lesson for us, and this time we're going to be solving multi-step inequalities, okay? So we're going to review first. We're going to do just a two-step inequality. The first one is negative 17n minus 9 is greater than 59. And we do it just like equations, and the only time that we change anything is when we're multiplying or dividing by a negative. So just remember that. All right, so first step, of course, is to add 9 to both sides. Then we bring that down. It's going to be negative 17n is greater than 68. And then we divide by a negative. So that's when we have to change the inequality from greater than to less than. We do that, we divide by 17, we see that it equals negative 4, or less than negative 4. And then we're going to go ahead and graph it. We'll graph a few of these, not all of them. And of course, we put a hollow dot on negative 4 and graph to the left. Okay? Then I wanted to go over just a little bit about the distributive property. We'll just make this an equation for starters, because then we're going to put distributive property with an inequality. All right, so remember now, when you see the number right next to parentheses, and in the parentheses you have a minus or a plus, you want to make sure that you draw your arrows, and then you say 3 times 4. Remember, that's like 3 times all of these. It's like you have 3 of these 4 minus x's. So it's 3 times 4, then you write down the minus sign, and then you go 3 times x equals the 9. Then you carry that down, 12 minus 3x equals 9. And then we subtract the 12 from both sides, just like we're solving a two-step equation. And, okay, we should have left this here. I should have said this is going to be, you bring down the minus 3. So you have minus 3 equals negative 3, okay? And then you divide by negative 3, and then a negative 3 divided by a negative 3 is going to give you a positive 1. Okay, are there any questions? And that's how you just use a distributive property. All right, so let's go over some real multi-step inequalities. Okay, our first one is going to be right here. Okay, so write that down. Be sure you copy that down. Then you want to circle, just like we did when we combined like terms. We're going to circle the terms that are alike. And we know that any number that stands by itself is like any other number that stands by itself. So they are like terms, and we call them, if you remember, constants. All right, so we circle the 3, and remember, we always want to circle the sign in front, plus 5. So then 3, because then that way we know what to do with these two numbers or these two terms. Now we know we need to add 3 to 5. So 3 plus 5 is 8. Then we copy down the plus, and then the n divided by 3, and then everything else. Now you might ask, why didn't you circle the 9? Because it's on the other side of the equation. The inequality. I only want to combine what's on each side, because to get to the other side, remember, that's when, just like we had the ponds, we had to do the same thing to each side. We don't combine the sides, we just combine what's on one side with whatever's on that side, and whatever's on the other side with what's on that side. To get from one to the other, we have to do opposite operations, inverse operations. All right, so we got the 8 and all this here. So the first step now is to get rid of the 8. So we were adding it, remember there's a really a plus here, positive 8, so we have to subtract it from both sides. When we do that, we're left with n over 3 is greater than 1. We didn't need to change the inequality, we're not multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So now we got to undo dividing 3, we got to multiply by 3. They're inverse operations, so multiply both sides by 3, and we're left with n that is greater than or equal to 3. And went ahead and graphed it here. Remember, 3, again, we're multiplying by just a 3. It's not negative. It is odd, but it's not negative, so we keep the inequality. Okay? That's our first example, I guess I should say, of the multi-step. Okay, next, we're going to do this one together. Okay, and this should be 4n. So go ahead and write this down. Negative 4n minus 15 plus 6n is less than or equal to negative 29. All right? So our first step is to combine whatever we can on whatever side to make that side a little bit to make it simpler. So we're going to circle our minus 4n, and we're going to circle our positive 6n, and we're going to combine them. I got a negative 4 plus 6. So we think of it, if you want to go over here and do it, negative 6 plus 4. Unlike signs, subtract this time. So it's really 6 minus 4, which gives us a 2n. Minus 15 is less than or equal to your negative 29. So be sure to write that down. And then, of course, we're going to get rid of the 15. We're minusing it, so we're going to add 15 to both sides. I always like to go across when I know especially have a negative, an integer there that's negative. This reduces to 0. So we have 2n plus 0, which is just 2n, is less than or equal to negative 29 plus 15, unlike sign subtract this time. So if you want to, you go ahead and write it underneath, but just know that your answer is going to be not positive 14, but it has to be negative 14 because the 29 is higher and it's negative. All right, so now we simply divide by 2, and you think, okay, do I need to change inequality? No, even though the answer is going to be negative 7, or beginning with negative 7, because I divided by a positive 2, a positive number, I leave the inequality be less than or equal to. And n then is going to be less than or equal to negative 7, and we can graph that or whatever, but we've graphed enough. I think we know how to do that. Okay, so the next example is, now we're going to use our distributive property. Okay, so there's a lot to do on the left-hand side first. So we want to go ahead, and once you see the number next to parentheses with an operation inside, you want to go ahead and draw your arrows. You go draw that 4 to the 8. Don't draw the 8 to the 2n. You're going to draw the 4 to the 2n because the 4 is being distributed to the 8 and to the 2n. In other words, you have 4 of these things. You have 4 of 8 minus 2n. Which if you want to write down 8 minus 2n plus 8 minus 2n, if you write down all 4 of them, you can, and encircle the like terms, you can do that. It's just faster to use the distributive property. So now I have 4 times 8 is 32. I write down my minus sign, and then 4 times 2n is 8n minus 6 is less than 10. Now I've got some things to circle and combine here. I can combine my 32 with my minus 6. So I think 32 minus 6, is that going to be 26, right? So 26, because, yeah, minus 8n is less than 10. Okay? So now I want to get rid of my 26. So I subtract 26 from both sides. Again, I'm going to write it going across just because that's how I like to solve my integers. That reduces to 0. Remember now, you've got to bring down the minus sign. Minus 8n. A lot of times you just, okay, 8n, but forget, because usually it's been plus. But once in a while now we're going to have a minus sign. So bring it down. It's less than, 10 minus 26. Well, we go ahead and we add the opposite. And we have unlike signs, so we really subtract. So 26 minus 10 is 16. It's going to be negative because the higher one is negative. Okay, then now we're going to divide by a negative 8. So once you divide by a negative, go ahead right away and switch your inequality. Before you forget, before you go on and divide and go through and try to solve it, I would right away switch your inequality. So this reduces to 1, and 1 times n is n. Is less than, now negative divided by negative is positive, and then 16 divided by 8 is 8. And just to review, just to make sure we know, we have a greater than sign. Here's my 0, here's my 8. It's a hollow dot on the 8 because it does not equal 8. So we're going to leave 8 hollow. And we're going to shade everything greater than 8. Again, just like we talked about before, when the variable is on the left, we can easily know that we're going to match it. We're going to shade the side that matches this inequality, that arrow. Kind of a little trick might help you remember. Okay, let's do the next example. All right, number 5. All right, so go ahead and copy down the first line here. There's a lot of stuff on there. I want to make sure we really practice this. Okay, so once you got it copied, then go ahead and circle the constants, and you can box up the other terms, the n terms. And then when you combine 5 minus 13, that's negative 8, and 5n minus 2n is 3n. So now we have right here sort of our really what we're trying to solve. Okay, so that kind of looks a little bit familiar. Hopefully it looks a little bit like a regular equation that we've been solving, a two-step equation. Okay, so first step is to add 8 to both sides. So we see that 67 plus 8 is 75, and that will bring us down to the 3n. Then we divide both sides by 3, and we have 25 is greater than n, or the way I like to make sure I'm going to graph it correctly, you could just, when you switch it, you have to switch the inequality, and you got n is less than or equal to 25, which is a solid dot on 25 because it equals 25, and that'll be less than 25, so you shade to the left. Okay? All right, I think we have one more example, and that'll be it for this video. Okay, number 6. Go ahead and write it down. Now again, we have another distributive property. The difference here is that we have a minus in front of it. It's a -5, okay, which might be a little tricky, and then we have a minus in here. All right, so go ahead and draw your arrows, and then we multiply. So -5 times n is -5n, and copy down that minus sign, and then you ask yourself, okay, what's -5 times 1? And that's -5. So we have 2 minus negative, however you want to say it, 2 signs indicating negative right there. So that's okay. You've dealt with that before. And then copy the rest of it down. I would go ahead and just add the opposite right away, because the sooner you can have plus signs, the better. So now you can draw your line if that helps you. And now I realize, oh, I'm adding 5. So how do you undo adding? You subtract. So I'm going to subtract 5. That reduces to 0. That equals 0. So you have -5n is less than or equal to 65 minus 5. I know that's 55. And then you're going to divide by a negative. Okay, so before you figure anything else out, go ahead and switch the inequality to be greater than or equal to. So that'll reduce to 1, and 1 times n is just n. And then -5 into 55 is -11. A negative divided by positive is negative. And that's your answer. Again, if you wanted to go ahead and graph it, you'd have 0 here, and you have -11 here. It would be a solid dot on -11 because it equals -11. And you're going to shade everything greater than it, everything to the right. Again, to match this arrow is going to, the arrow is going to match the inequality when your variable's on the left. All right, that's it for this video. Good job, and we'll get to the next one in just a minute.